forget to rate our show and subscribe.
Before we begin this podcast, if you or someone you know is in crisis or needs emotional support, there are tools that can help. So get yourself a pen and paper or open a note-taking app on your phone or computer. Feel free to pause this episode while you get yourself ready. The episode starts at 1 minute and 52 seconds. You can call Talk Suicide Canada at 1-833-456-4566. You can text 45645, which is coming in the fall of 2023. In Canada, you can also call 988, the Kids Help Phone at 1-800-668-6868. The Trans Lifeline in Canada is 1-877-330-6366. And in the United States, 1-877-565-8860, or call 911. You are not alone, and you do not have to be alone. I would like to honor and recognize the traditional and unceded territories of the Katzie, Kwantlen, and Semiahmoo nations on whose territory I live, work, and play. Welcome to We Are the ADHD Family podcast. This podcast is meant to chronicle our journey with ADHD, autism, and other discoveries along the way. I reach out to advocates, experts, individuals, and other families that want to raise their voices and empower those on their journey. My name is Mark Smeets, and I am passionate about removing barriers for others through creating connections and building on strengths and practical problem solving. I am married to Siobhan, a parent of 2 wonderful kids, and all of us have ADHD. I want you to feel like you have power and hope. And now, into the episode. For those that are about to forget to make dinner for their families because you are listening to this podcast, we salute you. Welcome to the show. In this episode, we are going to bring our conversation to a close. My guest has been Melissa Madison. She's been a teacher and worked in various capacities of our education system for over 15 years. She was also my son's grade 2 teacher. Over the past 4 episodes, our conversation has been centered around presenting parents and teachers with practical tips on how to help each other and students. Looking back on the previous episode with Melissa, we were discussing working with resistant parents, how parents are the key to connecting resources and services, how a school-based team works, and my experience with the school-based team, the constraints on trying to get psych eds done, and why is it so hard to get support for our kids. I hope you enjoy this final segment. This one's a bit lighter in material, but we still go through some really practical hands-on stuff. Let's close things out, and for you, I want you to speak to the teachers that are out there that are possibly listening, okay, and give 3 to 5 tips in terms of approaching a parent and saying, or even just opening up a conversation. And I will happily give 3 to 5 tips on the parent side of things to say, here's what you can do, to get empowered and to figure out what the next step is, because the parent is really in the driver's seat more than anything, right? The pressure and the point is, I think, is on us to sit there and go and ask, maybe being able to ask the right questions. Mm-hmm. But yeah, I can go first, or you can go first.
You go ahead, and then cool. I can jump in.
Cool. I think for me, there's one without question is ask questions. If you see something odd, ask. And don't worry if you think you're asking the question the wrong way, just ask the question. Mm-hmm. Right. And I think it's perfectly fine to admit that you don't know what's going on. You think something's odd or out of place or what have you, or they should be at a certain level. Why do it? Just ask it whatever way. I find very few people will truly actually even get offended by it. Use your child's voice as much as you can. There's another one. And have them be the ones to say, I don't understand this. I just don't know why. I think for the research side of it, I had to think about this. I think as a parent, we want to be educated, we want to learn all these things, but there's a lot of bad stuff out there and a lot of
Uh-huh.
crap.
Mhm.
And so, you know what? It's hard for me to sit there and say be aware of the bad authors, but
Mm.
like I would sit there and I would not listen to a single thing like Gabor Matt has got to say. Like the dude, I want to see this guy go away. This whole thing that he's got going with ADHD is ridiculous. Anyways, I think just knowing where those things are, or for that matter, like you and I talked about offline, like the ABA therapy and how damaging that can be to a student, and to sit there and quote unquote hide the undesirable traits or features that somebody may have. No, so it makes you unique.
Mhm.
It could very well be a strength. Educating yourself about that, I think, it's critical, because a lot of people don't know. They don't know these things.
Mm.
um, I think if you join a Facebook group, that's pretty smart, but again, take everything with that grain of salt, and you want to know, what should you look for,
Mhm.
what are the things to avoid. um, those are the kind of things, especially when you have your suspicions. And I would say open a relationship with a teacher and have that open, candid conversation, and come at that place from humble inquiry, I think,
Mhm. Mm.
and be open to, maybe I'm missing something, maybe I'm not. I just see something that's wrong, and just try to figure out the answer, that piece. And I know a lot of people don't have a family doctor, but again, there's another one that I'd love to say trust talking to your family doctor, but I've been seeing more and more stories about no, that's not the greatest idea either. Um, it's you want to be able to trust them, but it's really hard in the neurodiverse world. So find yourself a doctor or pediatrician that you know and can trust, and you can bounce something off of that fits with your ideals. And even if you get maybe lucky part of the way with that, be willing to take that information in and just understand, you can't just say I don't agree with it. Why don't you agree with it? What are the points that you disagree on? Make it mechanical and a process more than anything else. That's what I would say. And I think the most important one is do it all with kindness.
Mhm.
Yeah, those are my more than 5 tips.
I love it, and I could advocate for the parent side too as a mom.
Yeah,
But I love what you said about humble inquiry. I think
yeah.
that's a really eloquent way of saying that. I would say that kind of my short and concise uh, advice, I guess, to teachers out there is to be curious. So always keeping that, curiosity peaked, because as soon as you think you know all the answers, or you think that um, that this behavior it fits exactly with this profile,
Mhm.
and you close the door on other options, you're limiting what could be, right, what could be discovered. And so remaining curious about behaviors, remaining curious about points of view that you hear from parents, if they agree or disagree with you, being curious about what's unfolding in front of you. um, so that would be my first thing. My second kind of piece of advice for teachers would be embrace gentleness.
Mhm.
I think that sometimes, especially when we're dealing with the children of the world, which generally are a vulnerable population, there can be an abrasiveness, or a perceived power dynamic that doesn't need to be there
Yeah.
when you are having conversations with parents. If parents are asking questions about your methods, your belief system, your pedagogy, the way that you physically lay out your classroom, rather than being offended by that, be confident in why.
Yeah.
And if you don't know why you set up something the way that it is, or that you do a certain behavior management process that you do, investigate, be curious, go back to that, right? Because sometimes, especially early career teachers, they go off what they've been modeled in their practicums or what they see on Pinterest or Facebook or TikTok or whatever. And so they actually have no conception of their own pedagogy around why they chose that. They just thought it looked fun, or they saw someone else do it, but they never actually questioned, is this functional, or does this match my belief system and the way that I want to teach in my classroom? So not only gentleness with how you approach the conversation with parents, because you're talking about their child who they love and want to protect.
Yep.
But also gentleness with yourself to go, I might not know all the answers. I might need to do some reflection to be able to get back to you about why I do that. So just that gentleness, I think, is important. And then I would say number 3 would be to seek help, and don't be afraid to seek help. So if you don't know an answer, if you have never seen this behavior before, if you have tried all of the different tools in your belt, to try and help with certain behaviors that you're seeing from a child, and it's not working, go get help. It's so important. We are a network of experts. And so there are people who can help you all around you. The classroom teacher next door might be able to think outside the box, because you're so invested in it, and you can't see outside of it anymore. Ask LST, ask IST, ask administration, get a mentor through the district's mentorship programs. Don't be afraid to seek help. And to say, I don't actually know about this. I want to find out more. Is this behavior connected to what we know about ADHD? Is this behavior connected to what we know about autism? Oh, it's not. Interesting. I wonder what else, those kinds of things. So seeking help, being gentle, being curious. And the last one I would say is just don't give up. So if you are, grinding against barriers, whether it's, parental barriers that, you have parents in denial, or parents who are, abrasive or not very accepting of what you have to say and things like that. That should not change how you support that child during your time. And there is a certain amount that teachers need to let go of impact and their reach, that at the end of the day, when that bell rings, the reach is no longer there. So what can you do within your capacity to support that child and help them reach their potential, even if you are grinding against barriers, staying the course with it? That's kind of what I would offer.
Cool. I think my last one, if I was a teacher, I would always say, seek the student's voice. As much as you can. And there's a story behind that, actually. The reason I say that, and it was a Pro D-Day thing I attended, and it was a disability advocate who I will not name, but this person's apparently well known. I'd never heard of them, but I'm just one guy. And they were talking about quote unquote inclusive ways to get kids that had disabilities engaged in the classroom, and everything that came out of her mouth was the complete opposite. And it was just like, oh God, no. So I did. I made a little point of saying this to the HR department. It was because I was mortified after I heard everything, and I stuck around to the very end of it. And it's just like, you did not even ask the student if they were okay with, I don't know, everybody dressing up in pajamas because they think they're a superhero. Dude. Anyways, thank you, Melissa, for coming on the show.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
And let's get some fun stuff.
Okay.
Favorite day of the week?
Wednesday.
Why Wednesday?
It's hopeful.
It's helpful?
Hopeful.
Oh, hopeful. What do you mean by But what do you mean by hopeful?
So Monday is the grind. Tuesday, you're exhausted and you have to keep going. Wednesday, you're like, okay, I'm over the hump. We're sailing towards the weekend, and there's usually less meetings after Wednesday. There's more fun activities planned, less stressful on Wednesday. What about you?
Now I get it. For me, it's funny enough, it's actually Mondays.
Okay.
Yeah, I'll Monday is the day that I would have when I'll take the kids to school or whatnot. It's the day that I have everything in the fridge. The fridge is fully stocked. Everything is cut and done, and I just sit there and just feel it's. I don't know if it's a pride thing or whatnot, but the kids are all taken care of. Siobhan's taken care of, and that's part of the reason for it. And the other part is just that optimist in me where I'm like, I've got the whole week to do something pretty killer. So
I love
I
that.
have I have no idea what it is, but that's usually, seeing that full fridge makes me happy. So um so this one's going to be interesting.
Okay.
So we're going to play what's the first thing that comes to your mind. And I'm not going to tell you if it's negative or positive. I'm just got
Okay.
4 phrases.
Okay.
They could even be a single word.
Okay.
And first thing that comes to your mind, you can elaborate if you want.
Okay.
Making space.
So what the first thing I think of?
Hmm.
I think of holding space.
Cool. Like this. And if anybody hears any clacking, it's because I was actually typing. I've been typing notes this whole time.
I have a notepad too. The quiet pencil.
Yeah. Okay, next one. You are so resilient.
Ugh. That's my one word response. I think I will elaborate on that one. And I only have a negative connotation to that
Same,
phrase,
yeah.
because of my own journey in life. Um, I think that often saying to a child that they're resilient is a way to negate their experience.
Yeah.
Children shouldn't have to be resilient.
No.
That should not be a word used to describe a child.
Yep.
Right? It just means that they've hidden and they've become complacent or are in some trauma response to appeal to the masses and what the norm should be.
Yep. Yeah. 100%. 100%. The as I like to say, it should not. It means taking crap well.
Yes.
That's not.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan of that at all. Um, Advocate.
I just think of adults, like pairing adults. So teachers and parents being advocates. Yeah.
Right. Accommodations/adaptations versus tools.
Hmm. Um, gosh, my word for that is tricky. It's tricky. Um, yeah, I think depending on how you're using it,
Yeah.
um, yeah, and it falls under the universal design mind frame for me. And uh, the biggest difference between the two, I feel like, is who drives it. So, like, tools are child centered. So, what tools they have, what they choose to use, there's choice
Mhm.
in that. Whereas I feel like the idea of adaptations and modifications are adult driven. What are we putting into place, and when do we put them into place
Ah,
for a child? That's my
interesting.
Yeah, whereas like a child who has a tool belt that's been fully stocked with strategies from
Mhm.
parents and teachers over the years,
Yeah.
there's autonomy there. There's choice where they can be like, this tool is going to work for me right now, and this is a tried and true tool. Whereas a teacher or a specialist coming in and saying, this is the modification that we're making to this activity so that your child can participate.
Yeah.
It's very adult driven. Less autonomy.
The it's I like asking that one because I always get curious as to where people lie with that. Maybe I shouldn't do the tell on this because I should just leave it to see where people sort of done it. But I know I've talked about it before with in an episode, but I know where the language comes from, which comes from the Human Rights Charter, and they use accommodations/adaptations. But I'm not a fan of it, because to me it says you're adapting something that should be considered a standard, air quotes, or normal, air quotes. And so we're making an adaptation for such and such, whether it's a child or adult.
Mhm.
And that runs into a problem, because it's not that it should be seen as doing something differently, should not be seen less as doing it another way differently. It just shouldn't. So I sit there and I look at for me, it's tools. It's gender neutral. It's neutral in general. And it's really getting to the point of, you have a different way of doing something. And
Well, I think the language is very ableist, right?
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
it's this idea that we're accommodating
Yeah.
your special need
Exactly.
into
Yeah.
our regular mainstream norm.
Yeah.
As opposed to, we all have these tools and we pick which ones we use based
Yes.
on the situation.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
No, 100%. And I know when I talk to staff, and I sort of hear those words, or teachers or whatnot, I always try to make sure that, we're using, I try to stick with the word tools as much as I possibly can. And I usually sort of lead with that. It's like, what tools are at our disposal? What can we do with it? A bit more mechanical too. So it's kind of easy. Once you kind of suck the emotion out of things and you make it mechanical, it's like, you know what? It's two things. My child doesn't have such and such tool, but they're being denied it. So it's like, all right, that makes me angry. Yes. So there's two things. Not only are you angry about it, but your child doesn't have the thing. And I think what we'll do, especially parents, will just sit there and combine and mush the two and make it into one. And sometimes, I think sometimes you got to be able to separate them.
Yes. And I think that we have to remember too that, there will naturally be emotionality that comes with parenting and the way we look and view our children and things like that, right? Because we are deeply connected to them. But there is a certain objectiveness that can be helpful, especially when you're on a journey to a diagnosis.
Yeah.
Because at the end of the day, we need to remember that children will perform well when they can.
Yeah.
Right? Children never choose the tantrum.
Yeah.
Right?
No.
They are dysregulated because they do not have a fully grown regulation system yet, right? So
Pretty much.
it's what tools are missing, what strategy is missing, what's the antecedent, what's the trigger point,
Yeah.
and how do we support that? How do we build that tool? So remaining, just a step back from it sometimes can be really helpful.
Cool. I like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And how can people get in touch with you if they wanted to, or if they have questions?
So you can always email my school district email. So it's madison_m@surreyschools.ca. That's always a way to get a hold of me. And I'll respond any way that I can to be helpful. And just no hate mail, okay?
No, better not be any, or else you get an answer from me. You do not touch me, sir.
I'm open to all feedback. So I love to have conversations, even with opposing views. So you can absolutely contact me on my school district email.
And I would love to give you the last word and close us out if there's anything else you want to say.
Gosh, oh, that's a lot of pressure. Just keep advocating, and keep being there for your kids. You are the one who can make things happen, and your voice is important as they're learning to use theirs. So
that's awesome. Thank you very much.
You're so welcome.
Okay. Bye, everybody.
Bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to our show.
If you're hearing this message, you've reached the end of the episode, and for that, I want to say thank you. I hope you have enjoyed what you've heard and are walking away with newfound knowledge.
We are the ADHD Family.
See you soon for a new episode. I have 3 things to ask of you. Number 1, if you have any comments, questions, or guest ideas, please leave a comment on the Facebook page. Number 2, please leave us a review on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps people find us. And number 3, if you want to be a guest on the show or know someone who would make a great guest, contact me through our Facebook page. This podcast is open to everyone. You don't need to be an expert, just passionate and want to see change. The opinions expressed by the host and guest are not associated with any employer or organization unless otherwise stated. Any medical information on this site and podcast is provided as an information resource only and is not to be used or relied on for any diagnostic or treatment purposes. This information does not create any patient-physician relationship and should not be used as a substitute for a professional diagnosis and treatment. Please consult your healthcare provider before making any healthcare decisions or guidance about a specific medical condition. The show, host, and its guests expressly disclaim responsibility and shall have no liability for any damages, loss, injury, or liability whatsoever suffered as a result of your reliance on the information contained in this site or show. By visiting this site and listening to this show, you agree to the terms and conditions, which may from time to time change or be supplemented by the show host.